Well, I thought it would be interesting for us, for our discussion, to tell you a little fairy tale, okay? First I'll tell you, and then I'll ask you some questions, guys, and we can discuss about it. This fairy tale, some of you guys who have been my students probably have heard this fairy tale before. But I think it's worth listening to that again, and of course many of you guys haven't heard it yet. It's a Oscar Wilde fairy tale, and it's called The Poet and the Nightingale, if I'm not wrong. Guys, when I say, like, if I'm not wrong, I would like you to forgive me, because I'm just telling it from memory, you know. It's been a long time I haven't told this fairy tale, and I haven't read it. But I don't think that's so much important. You're not here to study literature. We are here to tell a good story, right? Which is a beautiful story. Oscar Wilde wrote. Okay, so once upon a time there was a nightingale. Nightingale is a kind of small bird, okay? So the nightingale was on the top of a tree in a beautiful garden, you know, and she heard somebody crying, you know, and she thought, well, this cry is not a regular desperate cry, you know. This is an interesting cry. I can feel it. This is a cry that has something to do with love. So she flew from her nest on top of a tree, you know, and she saw a little a little guy, right? A poet, actually. So he was young, probably in his 17s or 18s, right? And the little poet cried to himself, saying, I have read all of the books. I have studied all of the philosophy. I have written many poems. I have a lot of money, but none of that will help me with my love, you know. And then the nightingale keeps listening, and she discovers what happened. The poet, feeling in love with a beautiful girl in town, mustered up courage and decided to talk to her about his feeling, right? So one day he went downtown because that's where she lived, and he waited until she left home. When she left home, he looked at her and said, look, I love you. Can I talk to you about my love? And then she stopped and looked at him, and then she said, okay, so tomorrow at 3 o'clock, you bring me a red rose, the brightest, the reddest you can find, and then you can talk to me about my love, right? The little poet was very happy with the news. He ran to his garden, which was that beautiful garden I told you in the beginning. And he looked for the rose everywhere. There were lots of yellow, white roses, but none of them were red as the girl wanted. He got quite, you know, upset, so he decided to go to other gardens in town, and this uncomfortable feeling started turning into desperation after he searched the whole town and surroundings, and he couldn't find a single red rose in the whole place, you know. So he went home, and he started crying in front of his window. So picture the window, okay, guys? Here is his desk, okay, in front of him. The poet is here, and there is a big window where you guys are, and that's the moment the nightingale heard about the little little poet's cry, right? Well, the nightingale said, well, I've finally found true love. This poet doesn't care about his knowledge, he doesn't care about his accomplishments, He doesn't care about the money he has. He just cares about love, and I have to help him, right? So he flew to the rose bush and talked to the rose bush, right? And of course the rose bush just gave white roses. And he said, she said, it was a she nightingale. If I said he before, just change that in your mind. So she said, look, isn't there anything we can do to help him? He has true love and we have to do something about it. The bush said, look, I just have white roses and there's nothing we can do. I mean, there is something, but that's too terrible, so just forget it. And the nightingale said, no, of course I won't forget it. It's true love. And then the bush told her what had to be done. The nightingale listened to that. She thought for a moment. Her face became very, sad. And she said, if that's what it takes for him to find true love, that's what we will do. And the bush looked at the nightingale and said, no, you can't do that. And the nightingale said, no, but we have to. It's for love, and this is important. And the nightingale insisted so much that the bush said, okay, so when it's midnight, you come back here, and we will have to do what is necessary, right? So at midnight, the nightingale flew close to the bush, right? And she hugged, the one of the stems of one beautiful white rose, right? As she hugged the stem, the thorn, thorn, that thing in the flower that can hurt you, the thorn started piercing, the nightingale's chest, and as it pierced the nightingale's chest, some of its blood was sucked by the thorn and went to the rose, and then it started to rain, so there was this big tempest, right? This big storm with lightnings and thunder, and we could see, the white rose with some tints of pink, right? The nightingale was hurting a lot, and she looked at the bush and looked at the rose at that moment, right? And said, are you ready? And the rose said, I'm sorry, I'm just a little bit pink. So the nightingale pressed herself even harder against the thorn, and more of her blood was sucked into the flower, and the flower started getting pink, right? The nightingale couldn't stand the pain, and it asked the flower, are you ready now? And the flower said, look, I'm very sorry to say, I really wish I didn't have to tell you that, but I'm just pink. And the little poet needs a bright red rose. So the nightingale, with all its strength, pressed herself against the thorn. The thorn pierced her heart, killing it and sucking all of the blood from the nightingale. Well, the rain passed. The next morning, the poet, by the way, the poet had slept on his desk like this, crying. He cried himself to sleep, right? So he woke up. It was past midday already, and remember his meeting with his possible future girlfriend was at 3, right? So he was feeling desperate as he was the night before, but as he looked out the window, he saw this beautiful red, bright flower, right? The most beautiful one he had ever seen. And beside the flower there was a little bird dead, right? So the little poet went there, picked up the flower and said, now I'm going to be happy, right? So he ran to the city, right? Took the flower to the girl and said, look, here is the most beautiful flower you can find. Can I talk now about my love? The girl picked up the flower, looked at the flower and said, no, you can't. Today morning, Peter went to my house and he actually gave me a very nice bracelet, some earrings, and a beautiful ring. And what is that compared to a mere road? And she gave it back to the poet, right? The poet picked up the rose, and as he walked home, he looked at it, threw it on the street, and said, "I will never write poetry again." And that's the end, all right? So guys, I would like your opinion on that. I don't know if you are very happy with the end. And remember, this is a fairy tale, so we are supposed to tell our children that fairy tale. So what do you think about it?